Well, I have to say, from a very um, geeky sort of point of view, is I definitely like a good factory tour, and just seeing these impressive factories and how they operate and the efficiencies was it was a once in a lifetime experience. Nagoya is the birthplace of Toyota, so we were privileged to be escorted through the Toyota museum and the plant, and then to have lunch with the executives. They too talked about the challenges that they saw for them around access to critical minerals. They saw the challenges around not only the access to critical minerals, but they saw the extraction of critical minerals being, in particularly one of theirs being copper, Chile. But we're concerned about the fact is that 85% of critical minerals were extracted outside of China, but were being processed inside China. And they saw that they certainly see the relationship with China as very important. But, if we've learned anything from the pandemic, is that we need to have a diversified supply chain. And they certainly are working towards that. And that certainly aligns again with the Southern Hemisphere Strategic Management Plan about, finding these assets, which we certainly have, and then getting investors in, signing supply chain agreements with big organisations such as the ones that we've just discussed, and then having that offtake agreement, and for those minerals to be processed outside, which means they're not getting transported from Chile or Australia to China, and then China then controlling the asset, and then those assets then being sold through, to Japan or to Germany. So I think it's they are certainly aware of the challenges and are certainly moving to diversify the supply chain channels. And I think that's very important. Sumitomo is one of the biggest and oldest mineral training houses in Japan. And JOGMEC, being Japan Oil, Gas and Metals National Corporation, also are big investors in mining companies, exploration companies such as Southern Hemisphere. And in fact, JOGMEC have already done a deal in Australia with an emerging Australian company in Western Australia, in fact, where is the head office of Southern Hemisphere, where they have recognised that there is a problem with critical minerals, and there's some challenges surrounding the supply chain, especially given the learnings from Toyota that more than 85% of critical minerals are processed in China. So they have become large investors in these exploration and mining companies. One of the biggest learnings, and for someone like me who has spent over 30 years in developing mining assets and infrastructure assets at site, they were very frank and honest about the investments. They too are looking to invest in critical supply chains that meet their ethical supply chain requirements, both legislatively and part of their corporate goals and ethical pillars. But they were saying that it's not just about price. So they're saying that if you want to have access to these critical minerals in these regions such as Chile and Australia, that you cannot just focus on price. You have to look at it from all of the pillars. Is it ethical supply chain? That is, are they making sure they're not using modern day slavery? Are they operating ethically, from a geopolitical way? Are they operating ethically from an environmental impact? So they're focused not on price, I asked them what they felt was the biggest challenges around some of the projects they'd already invested in, and they were very frank, and I admired them for that. They were saying the realization that it's patience and time, and that these supply chain channels will take patience and time, and they're prepared to be patient, and they're prepared to make the investment. So I thought that was very interesting from someone who has worked on some very big projects. The biggest project I've worked on was $500 billion oil and gas project. And in fact, JobMec weren't invested in that initial project. So I found that really refreshing, and I found that very encouraging. And I also found that definitely aligned with the Southern Hemisphere strategy. I see this as very exciting. There's certainly been some follow-up discussions from some of those Japan meetings, and we look forward to, I guess, progressing those discussions further. We certainly see there's a lot of alignment strategically with Japan and some of those large companies. I think it was also really refreshing to know that we have the support of both the Australian and the US Embassy to progress those discussions. So over the coming months, we'll be having further meetings, but there's certainly been some exchanges of emails and some invitations to present to some of those companies that we met with in Japan.